I remember it like it was yesterday. I was a marathon runner, so I often ran first thing in the morning.
It was a beautiful morning. It was September, like 70 degree, just deep blue sky. It was a great morning.
September 11th is my birthday, so I had taken that day off. I remember putting my kids on the bus in the morning, and by the time I got to the gym, I saw what was happening on TV, and I immediately went home and threw a bag together and went in.
So when the first plane hit, we had our TVs around the office and we saw the live footage, and everybody was confused as to what happened. When the second plane hit, though, my boss saw it live. He came running back into the trading room and he said to everybody, he announced there was no accident, everybody out.
I knew that I would know many people, and I did, who were killed and many who were very injured. It's one of those moments in life where you think you've done and seen everything, and everybody's ill-prepared for it, no matter how much you think it might happen.
So I was not prepared for what I experienced and saw at the site, and I don't think humans are really built to experience that. And I certainly didn't have the life experience to be prepared for it. It was hard. I had horrific nightmares for many, many months.
By the end of the night, it kind of hit me what had happened. I broke down like a baby. My wife was the strong one of the group that day, and she basically just poured me into bed.
Motivation for us, frankly, came from seeing all the people, the family and relatives, friends of the people who were missing. They had set themselves up largely outside the perimeter of the World Trade Center, and they were holding up pictures and they were looking for information, and it was heartbreaking to see. Our job was to try to find their loved ones. Our job was to try to, if their loved one was not alive, it was to bring them home so they could have funeral, they could have that sense of closure for the family, and that was very motivating to us. It was very difficult. The smoke was intense, the heat was intense, and my team personally did not find anyone alive. It was just not that sort of a situation. It was very loud. And there were times when my unit had to have some quiet to hear through microphones that we would drop down to see if anyone was calling for help, where everybody's yelling, "Quiet, quiet, quiet." That's because my unit was asking for quiet because we thought we had a human voice on a microphone. Difficult to describe to people unless you're there, but I think in a word, overwhelming.
I wanted to help if I could. I did, frankly, explore. I ended up on a rooftop downtown, and I was a photographer, so I brought my camera with me, and I talked to the police. We didn't know how many people had died. So I went home exhausted. I don't even remember if it was nighttime, but my neighborhood and all of Lower Manhattan was so smoky, and the smell was so strong that you couldn't sleep. And that's part of what drove me to end up volunteering. I started at a little canteen on the east side. The main thing that we wanted to do is provide food, water, coffee. You try to get them in the tent for 5 minutes to not see the debris, because they were very concerned what would happen psychologically if they couldn't do that throughout the day. So that was our main goal, and to have them be able to talk about their day and unload and then go back to work. I ended up doing that for 9 months.
Walked past the exchange, people were outside looking up, looking confused. The police were trying to get people away from the area. There were a lot of police, firemen, of course, sirens, trucks, ran out of film and started walking home. And that's when the Tower 2 fell down, the collapse. I could hear some screams and see people's eyes, go wide. I turned around to see it, and we've all seen the images of the big plume of smoke as the tower is falling. I couldn't see anything but the smoke, so I didn't know what it was, but it was frightening as hell and very loud. So anyway, I turned and ran, just started running. I'm in a suit and penny loafers, and I was flying. Well, the smoke, the plume, it caught up with me. I was like a tidal wave. Came in very hot, dark, and knocked me to the ground. Filled up my ears and my nose, got in my mouth, kind of rolled down and got myself into a fetal tuck, and yeah, I thought that was it. But I guess I was far enough away where after a couple of minutes, seemed like eternity, the force had died down, and I knew I was still okay and at least able to get up and move. So I did that, eyes stinging, trying to breathe through my shirt. But after a few blocks, several blocks, I got out of the smoky area and was able to make my way home to our apartment.
This is a picture taken by a detective named Bill McNulty from my unit on the morning of the collapse. He was at the site, and as he took the picture, the North Tower was falling. He had jumped behind a construction trailer with several other people, including a police lieutenant, and underneath the fire department turnout coat here was a detective from my unit named John Rogers, who was severely injured. They threw the turnout coat over him to try to help him stay away from some of the soot. He took these pictures. He shot the entire roll in several seconds because he thought he was going to die, and he wanted the camera and the film to last as a legacy of what happened at the last moment. This picture to me represents the massive response by a variety of agencies and workers. In this photo are firefighters, police officers, emergency medical people, and quite a few members of the construction trades in New York City. The iron workers in specific came down in droves to help us cut through steel and move steel. And they worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for up to 6 months without complaining. And I felt honored to be among people who were so brave, so dedicated, and so willing to give so much of themselves for strangers, risk our safety, risk ourselves. My children missed me greatly. I barely saw them. There's a lot of sacrifice involved, but it was absolutely something that all of us felt compelled to do. I would not have been anyplace else. The pictures represent to me a chapter of my life that I was, despite the fact that it was a tragedy, I was honored to have been part of the response to it.
There's a picture where the South Tower is gone and the North Tower is there. And that for me was just the worst moment of it all, knowing what had happened and what was about to happen. And it's hard to look at still. You just want to reach out and tell them, if we could only go back in time, right? There's one at the very end. Most of it's out of focus, but it's a bunch of the laborers, but they're all packed in, waiting to go down into the closing ceremony. And I just love that picture. The way they're positioned, it's a beautiful picture, and it's very poignant because we're closing the site officially and what we'd all been through. It's hard. I mean, I like looking at them and seeing the faces. I do keep in touch with a number of people that worked at the site. But it is hard emotionally. I find it's quite heavy. And sometimes I'm a little bit concerned about getting too into them, that I'll go back into that headspace, because it was definitely a little depressing time at the end. But I also feel like I really want to share them with the world. I do think it's important to see what happened and who helped. And
I loved those little disposable cameras, we didn't have the phones, a big camera, it's hard to lug around, so I always had one of those with me. It did take me a few days to turn it in, to get developed. But I'd say it was about a week later when I got them and looked at them. The whole roll of film was taken that morning, so it was pretty powerful to look at with my wife. That one of the police officer, you can see the grief already on his face, as if he knew what was going to happen, perhaps to his colleagues, his brothers. He was just looking up in shock, just like everybody else.
I had seen a lot of brutality and violence in my career up until that point, but I had never seen such complete devastation on a large-scale basis. America hadn't in general. And it was overwhelming. It takes a while to really think about what you just saw. I preferred to look at the goodness that was there, and there was so much of it that I think it outshone what I saw in terms of the hatred.
I really think that the tragedy of something like 9/11, it brings out the equal beauty and humanity. That's what I took away from there, and that's what I experienced at the site. Every day was driven by the families of the people who were killed, and that was everyone's goal, was to find closure for these families.
I learned a bit of gratitude for life that day, and I still feel it to this day. And I'm coming together. Maybe we need to remember that a little bit better. Yeah, I hope that they have that takeaway from this, because that was the good that came out of this.
I can guarantee you everyone that died that day had a routine. I have a meeting at 9, I'm going to my kid's baseball game right after work, I'm doing this for lunch. Everyone had their day planned. Well, this is a reminder that your day can change in a moment, in a New York minute, literally. And that's what happened. Not just your day, your life. Your whole family's life, the country's life, changed in 1 minute.
It was one of the worst moments of my life. So my dad was there, my mom, and my brother. And we're just sitting on the couch in my parents' house and just watching, and just, in some ways it's surreal, it was just disbelief.
A chill went through me because I realized this is New York and that's where he was. Decided to call Dina. I thought, well, at least I'll know if she's spoken to him. I called and my heart sunk. She said, your brother's on a hijacked plane.
I lived on the 5th floor of a walk-up, about 10 city blocks from the Trade Center. Seeing the second plane hit, it was very quiet, and then it was this massive explosion. Even from 10 blocks away, it was very scary. We kept looking around like more planes were coming. That's what we thought.
We lived around the corner from St. Vincent's Hospital, which was the closest hospital to the towers. This is where they're going to bring everybody. But there weren't any sirens because there were so few survivors. That was something that hit us.
Just like the generations before us tried to talk about the importance of Pearl Harbor, this is a moment when America's bubble burst. Our sense of security in our own homes in America was shattered. And I think that's what impacted people the most, is this feeling that, wow, I'm really not as safe as I thought I was.
Gordy was working in his office and heard about the plane going into the other tower. He stayed there because they provided sort of like a PA announcement, essentially. Came over this loudspeaker and said, we think everything's fine in this tower, everybody should stay where they are. And so he remained in the tower and then was there until the second plane hit. So we're checking hospitals, we're checking, with friends and family, trying to find anybody who knew anything, and we couldn't find anything from anybody. I think we all felt something. We all felt a sense of loss. We all felt like, he wasn't coming back. We didn't have closure until we, received word from New York that they had discovered his wallet to start with. And so they sent us the wallet, what was it, credit cards and all those kind of things, dry cleaning bill. So we had that. And so I think at that point, we knew that he was gone.
My brother Tom was in New York. He decided to come home early because it was his daughter's first day of school and it was kindergarten. After this plane took off, 4 terrorists appeared and took over the cockpit. The plane turned, and obviously they were being hijacked. When my brother could, he called his wife, Dina, who was in San Francisco. Dina had the news on, so she was able to relay very specific information to him that he could then share with other passengers that were sitting nearby him. He knew after the plane had hit the Pentagon that they had to act fast. So on the last call, when Tom was talking to Dina, she said, "What can I do?" And he said, "I want you to pray, and we're going to do something, Dina. We're going to do something." They decided to make their move when they saw that they were over a rural field and breached the cockpit. The plane crashed, didn't reach its intended destination, which was the nation's capital.
Well, he was larger than life. He was stocky, he was strong, he was loud, he was just a person who, when you walked in the room and you just noticed him.
I remember looking up to him greatly, going, man, the guy was charismatic. I mean, I knew in junior high, this guy was loaded to 10 with charisma.
Oh, he loved New York. He wanted to be in New York his whole life. I think he was so attracted by the restaurants and the bright lights and Wall Street and all the amazing things about New York. And he had great friends there, and they had a great time. That was sort of his dream, was to be working on Wall Street. He loved the view. It always scared me because I don't like heights, but he would definitely bring us out there and and I'd be 20 feet away from the window, and he'd be like making fun of me because he's like, "Come on, check it out." And I'd be like, I'm good right here.
He was my brother. I was his younger brother. He unfortunately has become more of a memory to me than tied up in 9/11 than he has. I wish he were still my brother who could be there to help with all of it. I feel like I miss that the most.
My brother was 6 years older than me, and so growing up, I obviously looked up to him and followed him around like a puppy, basically. He taught me how to throw the ball. I played football with he and his friends, so I could throw a football. I could do all the sports, and he kind of admired that, so I felt pretty cool about that. I loved him dearly, and I know he loved me. He loved the outdoors. He loved hunting and fishing, being on the lake. He loved American history big time. He was kind of the life of our family, being the middle boy. It was, definitely a big hole when, without him there. Tom's daughters are amazing, and that is an amazing living legacy. He would be so proud of them, and I know he is. They started in kindergarten on that day and graduated successfully from high school, college, and grad school. They're successful in volunteerism and being good people. He was a great dad, and I know that he would have liked to be there for those milestones and moments. He was a dad, he was working, he is a son, a brother, and he was called to action on that moment along with the other passengers, and they did what they were called to do.
This type of memorial is important to have, not only the memorial itself, but documenting the stories of the people most directly impacted as a way to provide an educational opportunity for those who may have not even been born on 9/11 to understand its context, its time and place, and the stories behind these Minnesotans who were lost and how some provided eyewitness to this event. So,
I want this to be a place that people can come and be comfortable, and people can come and be joyful.
We've designed it in such a way that there's layers of meaning that you could attach to it, right? You can experience it walking by and just read the large bold text. And then when you get right up to the actual artifacts, you need to look down into a recessed enclosure where those artifacts will be. There's a couple of pieces of steel, there's a piece of glass.
We have an incredible flag flown by my childhood best friend, Stuart Howell, or Captain Stuart Howell.
After 9/11, as we started going in what we called Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, so these wars overseas, people started to fly flags or other mementos, but flags for people that were special to them back home. Naturally, for me, being close to the Amos family, I said, you know, one of these, I gotta get one of these to the Amos because of everything that went along.
That flag will actually be in a separate enclosure, and I believe what we're intending to do is actually take it out of the enclosure on the 9/11 anniversary, raise it up on a flagpole as part of the ceremony, and then at the end of the day, lower it back down, fold it back up, and return it back into it. This is both for the community, but it's very important to the Amos family.
It's about all of us. It's about the people. This part's hard for me to talk about. The people who gave up essentially their lives to walk around and sort of try to figure out if they could help find remains. Doing that for a year, I can't imagine doing that. The people who ran into the building when I'm sure every part of them wanted to run away, the people they didn't know that they were going to go try to save, everybody that was involved in that day and everybody afterwards.
I hope that this next generation has an opportunity to visit the memorial here in Wayzata and share stories about what has happened on that date, but also find it inside of them to that patriotic spirit that they can do something in their lives, that they can respond and be an active participant in our citizenship and our country.
It took me a while to understand what impact it had on the world and how everybody was grieving, and the stories people would tell me about I moved back from New York because I moved back from Washington, D.C. because I wanted to be closer to home, and so just the real impact on a lot of people's lives necessarily weren't a part of it, but felt like it was something that transformational and it changed their lives too. I don't think we knew about that or processed that initially, but I think over time we appreciate it more.
After September 11th, neighbors helped neighbors. There were people, volunteers, first responders, the firefighters. Everybody was an American, and they were willing to help, support one another, and things were different.
What unites us is our common humanity, our desire for the same things. We want to be part of something productive in our lives. We want to have family and friends. We want to belong. We want to give. We want to enjoy what's good in life. We want to lean on each other when we go through what's bad in life.
Yeah, it's been the largest, single challenge I've had to face as transitioning into an adult or throughout my life. Things, you know what I mean? How to be there, how to show up for others. The more uncomfortable things in life, that they exist, and I think, that's a hard lesson to learn.
My brother used to say this, life is for the living. And he would say to my parents, what are you going to do next? What are we going to do? And he always inspired them to take trips and see things, learn things. And in that spirit, I would say that hug your families. Yeah, this is my sister Martha. This is my brother Tom, and there's me. Appreciate every day that we have as a family, as a community, as a country. Life is short, so we don't need to be spending our time fighting about things that don't matter. That's for sure.
Be appreciative of every day you have in life. Be appreciative of every relationship you have. Care about each other. Don't be afraid to be happy and proud to be an American, where we live in a place where we take great pains to make sure that you have the freedom and security that we have here.